Well, Paul, I want to get into the nitty gritty of the gambling now on dogs and being a professional punter. What does a normal day look like for you?
Generally is doing videos, and I mentioned about the old way of watching DVDs or videos as it was then as well, and then I always had my race cards and made notes on the race cards, and then would print off the sheets. And I kind of got out of that habit when we were at Chingford and doing the cards with Gary Noble. But I've now developed it and adapted it so that I run off the race card proof. So where I don't get programs anymore, I'm basically working from home. Very rarely, obviously, and since COVID, we don't go to the track anyway. But I always, on the A4 size sheets, run those off, make my notes for that particular race, and then after that race, the day after, we'll then go through and make my notes of what actually happened. So I make notes of what I think is going to happen, and then what actually happens afterwards, and keep basically an encyclopedia of a form book.
So what are you looking for when you're looking at the form?
I suppose looking for, again, we mentioned this, track draws, make sure that your dog gets a clear run. You're looking obviously to try and bet the fastest dog in the race, but it doesn't always mean that if you get a fast dog with a bad track draw, sometimes that would lend itself to it not winning. So, and the other important thing that I do, which I think I've actually got in my later years really proficient at, is pricing up. So price is always going to be key. So as I mentioned before, price versus probability, and it's something that you can make a dog a 6-4 favourite, and it'd be a good thing. If you don't get 6-4 and it ends up being backed and going into 4-6, 8-11 on Betfair, I might even turn around and go from being a bet to a lay. That's how those margins are. That's the belief in your prices. So you're basically trying to be master of your trade, where you believe in your prices and your prices are everything.
What about overcoming challenges of gambling? And I'm assuming COVID has brought a pretty big challenge for you, particularly in the first lockdown when we didn't have racing here in the UK. How did you manage that?
Well, I'd started, I think I mentioned, I started punting when we first moved to Leicestershire. We're in Waltham on the Wolds, and we moved here to get mortgage free, and we were kind of going to Perry Bar when we had Florence. And I was doing Perry Bar, and then things changed there when the Hall Green trainers in. I just kind of didn't feel comfortable, and we ended up then moving Florence to Nottingham, and I got into Nottingham probably about 3 years ago. And funny enough, when I was in between looking at tracks before, well, I think I mentioned when I left Romford and I switched and did Crayford, I got the videos from Mel for about 3 months, and I waited and waited and waited. And I think I had about 17 bets and had one winner, and I just couldn't make it pay there. I couldn't get that difference between the speed at Romford and Crayford to the gallopers at Nottingham. But I feel, again, I probably got, as I've got older, my abilities probably improved. I think you need sometimes to take 2 steps back and not get carried away. I think sometimes you can compartmentalise dogs. You need to be quite open-minded, and sometimes the best bets that I have are dogs that have had 50 races around there. Most people will say, oh, I always look for a pup or something that was really unlucky. But I think sometimes it's trap draws, and if you know that dog has got a little bit of an easing grade, and there are grades within grades, but it's that ability to understand that speed. I'm not really massive on sectionals. I don't really go a lot on sectionals per se. Obviously you need to be reasonably quick at the end of or the end time, and that gives you a guide. But again, going allowances can be a little bit of it's one man's, the race manager's opinion against yours sometimes. So that has to be taken into consideration. That always comes through when I'm doing the notes the day after, where I look right the way through and say, did they get that right? Did that dog actually go that little bit faster? So yeah, getting into that routine of basically doing videos, working hard and getting your prices, and then from then trying to sort of say, well, am I going to try and get an early early price bet, or am I going to wait, or is it going to be Betfair, and what's it going to be? And that, again, it's just assessing it all,
And in terms
making judgments.
in terms of switching tracks, when there wasn't racing here, you very quickly had to switch to betting on Australian greyhound racing. So how did you find? I mean, there's lots of differences in Australian greyhound racing. How was that?
Yeah, again, and going back, it was Gary. I got back in touch with Gary and said I'd like to get into. How do you get? What do you know? Any websites where you can watch videos? He said, well, I'm actually developing the track dog system that he had for the English dogs into the Australian model, and again, he did it brilliantly, and we started knocking ideas around, and we were doing the Victorian tracks, and I knew through my Go Barking Mad days, doing the racing there, which at the time, that was 2001, I got hooked on. There was Brett Lee who started there, and I was really into the Australian racing bad, and it kind of then came full cycle, and I was suddenly realised that I wasn't the only one that was doing that sort of thing. There were a lot of other lads getting involved, but I found it hard, Julie. I found it really difficult to get into it, because we were doing the Victorian tracks, and they can go from Warragul to the Meadows to Sandown, and all different tracks. They don't need to grade at one particular track, and I got, again, betting really small to just feel my way into it, got into a good rhythm, and then just hit a brick wall, and I found it really, really difficult in the end. And that's when I kind of then I rung a man that I'd rung a couple of years ago, Harry Finlay. I knew Harry was into the Australian dogs, and we started chatting through, and I kind of started again, and we started then leaning towards Western Australia a bit more, Perth, the Mandurah and Cannington, and that has been a real success, something that I've really enjoyed doing. And then Nottingham came back, and I started getting back into Nottingham, and the Derby came, but I've kept doing Australia. And it was hard. It wasn't easy. It's all about adapting and learning and developing all the time. Gambling isn't easy, Julie. Don't let anyone tell you that it is. I make a living out of it, and I make a decent living out of it. But it's never ever a guarantee that you're going to win. And I know in the long run I'll always win. But those tough patches in between, they're not easy. And that's why you need a good woman by your side. There's no danger there.
I think it takes a hell of a lot of commitment as well. Your style of gambling is sort of little but often, if you like, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not a big player. I'm not a big player at all. But again, it's these prices. I'm always looking for value. I won't really bet too many short ones. And again, everything's key. I mean, last night I bet a dog at 11 to 10 that I made 4 to 7. That was in an open at Nottingham. But generally, I'll be looking for a dog I make 6 to 4, 7 to 4 that gets chalked up 9 to 2 and 5 to 1, and you try and take advantage of those early prices.
Do you get affected by dogs being punted or drifting? I know you said you might switch tack, and if a dog becomes too short, it might become a lay rather than a play. But does it influence your thoughts on how you think the race might go? If you fancy a dog and it's 3 to 1 and they drift out to 6 to 1, would that affect your thinking?
No, the theory is, that was a Jerry Croxer theory. You should have more on, because I think once you start thinking, this dog's no good, there's something wrong, then that gets to your head, and I think keeping a level head and watching markets and assessing. The thing is, everyone's got a different opinion, and your opinion is not going to be right all the time. But again, it's all about long run and taking advantage of what you perceive to be errors.
You said you focus on particular tracks as well. I know at the moment that's very much Nottingham. What about other things that might influence dogs you want to back? Do you look at trainers? Do you look at breeding, things like that?
Don't tend to look. Lorraine's quite big. She likes to look at breeding. She's quite good at. We've done a bit of breeding ourselves, but not really. No, it's not really something. No, I don't really look at. I tend not to look at trainers. No, I think that again, that's that you start getting an emotional. So I think you've got to take the emotion away from gambling. I think it's got to be purely what you kind of go. It's definitely an instinct. It's an instinct that you sort of learn to develop, I guess, and you're just looking for something. I think you price up the chances, whatever you think will get a clear run, and that is again key. And then just bet accordingly.
We talked about how you handle losing runs, and I think it sounds like it's a good job. You have got Lorraine there by your side to help you through them. What about other strengths as a gambler? What would you say are your strengths in helping you be successful?
I would say grafting, basically. I put a lot of time. I've got to tell you, Julie, that my pals, such as I talk about Alan and Podge and people like that, and especially a lot of the younger kiddies, that they have got probably a lot more raw talent than I have. I have to work really hard to do it. It takes me quite a while. But that is the key, is the determination to see it through and get it right, basically. I'm one of them people that if you do a job, you do it properly. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you, as long as you get there in the end, and the end product is that you win year on year, then in my eyes, that's being successful.
I've watched quite a few of these Betting People interviews with professional punters, and particularly around horse racing. You know, that you sort of talk about it, the horses are an animal, they're kind of, but they're earning a living for people, and that's fine. And same with greyhounds. Greyhounds, UK's #1 pet. They're not to you though, are they? They're not just a sort of commodity that makes you money. You're very much involved in people. You love the dogs. You have some at home.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that, and you know, you mentioned I've been an owner, I've been a kennel hand, I've been a racing manager, I've been a commentator, I've organised a Cheltenham race, and I didn't organise the Cheltenham race for any financial gain. I got paid for it, but I did it because I love the sport. I want the sport to survive. I want the sport to be showcased, and I think that it's gone from, and I think this is basically through computerisation. It takes away the kind of the enthusiasm and the enjoyment and the excitement of ground racing, to just turn it into a numbers game. And that's what I get really annoyed by bookmakers not really taking it as seriously as they could. And that's where someone like Ben Keith, who's been a lifelong enthusiast of the sport himself and got money out of it, you know, by being a part of the industry, by being a bookmaker and being a good bookmaker, but he puts money back into it. And what he's done with the Derby, you know, he'll stop sponsoring the Derby. They took it up to a different level, you know, with Ralph Topping and Jamie Hart when they were at Hills, when Rio Quattro won all that money, but then it stopped. So for Ben to do what he's done, he's kind of put back, I think, the kind of punter to bookmaker rivalry, but it's a friendly rivalry. It's something that's always been there, you know, right the way back through the ages of when I was at Romford. I used to be pals with Steve Simmons, but I used to buy a car off him, but I used to punt with him and he used to blame it. It was one of those that it's that old school thing, and I think that's what we need to try and get that resurgence back, where it's not all that computerization and stop his account and send in the email. I don't see how, if you're a bookmaker, how can you not take bets? That's your business.
Well, there's been some news kind of touching on that recently, which I think will incentivise punters around the TOTE, and that's something that you're really pleased about, the news, 5% back into the TOTE. Yeah, again,
that was kind of through Harry as well. Harry was involved, and we were trying to get things off the ground last year by me doing a tissue for the Derby, which we did anyway. And we were punting on, as I said, in Australia, we were punting in on the Derby and trying to get things right and have that kind of heads together thing. And now the TOTE has come through, and Jamie Hart, who was with Hills, is really enthusiastic. I mean, real good whiz kid. They've realised that greyhound racing, that has been kind of used and abused by these bookmakers for so long, it can be successful. So although we're not used to having a tote. When I was at Romford, I used to do the tote jackpot all the time, and we used to get quite a lot of success, me and Al, doing the jackpot. But there's no one at the track to really then make the tote pay. On a Saturday night we used to do it, but again, dwindling crowds, bags meetings, there's hardly anyone there. Now we've got, through it being online as well, through COVID, there's no one going to a track, but through it being online, there's now a model which says, well, you can bet into a pool and you can get genuine prices. A lot of these now where they throw prices out there, you have a bet, they slash the price. There's no. If it's 4 to 1, there's no 7 to 2 or 3 to 1. It tends to go 5 to 2, and I think it makes ground racing into a bit of a joke. And I think the tote will come through now and take it seriously. And I think their allegiance now with Toaster, what Kevin's done at Toaster, I think has been brilliant. That's been so difficult through COVID. They're trying to get Toaster TV off the ground. Dave Clark's, I think, a breath of fresh air, really good for the sport, and he's hosting Toaster TV along with Hobbsy. And I heard news today. Hopefully, I might be able to get some kind of commentating job there as well, which I think it just helps to make again the sport professional, appealing, and hopefully a resurgence again through this assistance through the tote.
Yeah, I think in hard times there is quite a lot for the sport to be positive about at the moment. But I just want to finish this interview with one last question. I'm sort of aware that there'll be regular people watching this who might have been thinking about a career professional punting, regardless of what's happening in the world. But there'll also be people who have lost their jobs, maybe furloughed, watching this. What is your advice to anybody who seriously wants to get into professional punting?
Well, funny enough, I've got 3 sons, and I've never told them to punt for a living. I never encouraged them to punt necessarily. The 2 oldest ones, they actually went in shops for me in the old days. They helped me get on. But I think you're right in that because of the times that we live in, I think greyhound racing, it's a great sport to bet on. It's generally 25, 30 seconds. I think that these days there is an ability more and more, and I think the Ladbrokes and course tracks are now giving videos free, which again is such a massive tool for you to be an expert, if you like, or get a bigger insight into basing your bets in the first place. And I think surely if you're a bookmaker, you want punters to have an opinion, to have a bet. I don't really get this, make it hard for them. I don't see the business acumen of making it difficult for punters to have access to videos or even get a bet on in the first place. It's a bit like Tesco saying, no, you can't have any trolleys or any baskets. You just got to go around the shop and get an armful. Well, I'm not going to buy as much then. Well, no. But then therefore people aren't going to bet as much with bookmakers if you can't let them have a bet. It's a gambling industry. Let's embrace it and let's cherish it and let's make the sport good again. And I think the tote going to help that massively. But yeah, going back to the question, right, encouraging young people, I think when this comes through, more and more people will be betting on the tote. They will be betting on Betfair, and hopefully the bookmakers will think, well, let's employ, as they do in Australia, people to give us a good tissue. And we'll say, well, come on, have a bet then, because we believe in our prices the same as I believe in mine.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Paul. I find it fascinating, and I'm in awe of the commitment that people like you show to making a living from gambling and how you do it. So thank you so much. Hopefully everybody else will find this interview interesting as well. And good luck punting for the rest of 2021. If you find the Derby winner, let me know.
Thank you.